Warning: the following tutorial shows the use of chemical adhesives and sharp objects that may harm you if used incorrectly. If you're not mature enough to use these items safely, please ask someone who is to help you. Plastic sheet is a wonderful material to help you cap off and finish off your custom-made twisty puzzle. From the simplest designs to designs that are more difficult, using plastic sheeting allows you to keep your puzzle lightweight with a nice finish at the same time. Suggested materials. We'll need a few different things for this project. First, your puzzle piece to cut. A razor saw to cut it with, or a hacksaw with a thin blade will work just as well. If you have a miter box at home, you'll want to use that to keep your cuts nice and straight. If you don't, that's fine. You can use a marker and a ruler to measure off your piece before cutting. You'll need a few different things to cut your plastic sheeting. First, your plastic sheet. We'll be using ABS 1.65mm thickness for this project. On the rough side, you want to sand it down with some sandpaper first so it sticks nicely to your puzzle piece. The side that I'm showing here is going to be on the outer face of the puzzle so that we can keep it nice and smooth for the finished project. You'll need a straight edge, metallic is best, a razor blade to cut your piece of plastic with, a marker to mark off your measured section, an adhesive of some sort. I'll be using Gorilla Super Glue for this. You can use Crazy Glue or Loctite Super Glue. Sandpaper at different grits. We'll be using 220, 400, 600, and 1200 for this project. A dust mask to protect your lungs when sanding your piece. A piece of paper or a Dremel with a polishing wheel to polish up and finish off your piece. Cutting your puzzle piece. Now that I'm outside, you can see that I have my miter box clamped down to my workbench. Clamping things down keeps things nice and stable so that you can keep your cuts nice and straight. We're going to be cutting on a 45-degree angle since we're going to be making a crazy 2x3x3 fissure cube. If you don't have a miter box, no problem. What you can do is that when you have your piece marked off on a 45-degree angle, you want to cut your piece, but make sure that you're nice and steady and take your time so as smooth as possible. If it's on an angle, just sand it down until it's nice and smooth. Cutting and capping with plastic sheet. Now that my piece is cut, and has been sanded to rough up the edges, and cleaned before starting, I want to measure off the height here. Since I'm going to be making 8 identical pieces for my crazy fissure cube, I want to make sure that I measure off a long piece. You can see here I'm measuring along the length of the plastic sheet. That way, after it's measured off, I can take my ruler, put it on top of my plastic sheeting, to help me keep my cut nice and straight. Then, I grab my razor blade. You don't need a lot of force, or you don't need to go fast when doing this. Be sure to take your time because you only need to score the plastic sheeting once. You can see here that I didn't cut the whole way through. When you score plastic sheeting, you can grab both sides along the cut and just slowly snap the piece off. You can see that it comes off very, very easily. Now that I have my height, I need to measure off the length of each individual piece. You can either measure it off with a ruler, or you can just take the piece itself and put it on the plastic sheeting. Since I'm using 8, I just measure it off 8 individual times. Now that they're measured off, it's basically the same process. I'll use my small metallic ruler and just measure it off 8 individual times. You can see here, there's not a whole lot of effort after you score the piece to snap it off. Just to verify, take your plastic piece and make sure that it fits okay on there. Next you want to take your glue. Again, I'll be using a Gorilla Super Glue for this project. It is a gel instead of a liquid, so I find it sticks better to the plastic piece. You don't need a lot of glue on the plastic itself, but you want to make sure that you use enough so that it adheres properly to your puzzle piece. With that bumpy side, you want to make sure that you did sand it off a fair bit. If you don't sand it off enough, or if you don't use enough glue, you'll find that gaps will form in between your plastic and puzzle piece. Now that it's ready, you want to take your puzzle piece and your plastic sheeting and lay it on top of each other. You want to make sure things are nice and even. Once they are, make sure you press it tightly together. Now that you see here, the plastic piece sits nicely on there. But there's a few more things that we need to do before it's done. Okay, so if you have glued your fingers together or glued a puzzle piece to your fingers, don't panic. There's an easy way to get your fingers apart. What you do is run to your kitchen, grab vegetable oil or canola oil. You want to grab a little bit and pour it on top of your fingers. You want to slowly work it in. It may take a couple of minutes, but after you slowly work it in, your fingers will be able to come apart. After the glue is dried, you want to do some rough sanding. This allows to take off any overhang from the plastic sheeting that we added to our puzzle piece. I like to grab a small piece of sandpaper at this point around on my edges. You can see here that everything is smoothed out. From this point, we want to go to wet sanding. Personally, I like to start off with a 400 grit and then move on to a 600 and then finish off with a 1000 or 1200 grit sandpaper. After sanding, you want to grab a bucket of soapy water and then wash off your piece. From there, you want to rinse it off as well. You want to make sure that you dry off all your pieces before polishing them up. You can see here all of my finished pieces for my crazy 2x3x3 Fisher Cube. Our pieces are now done, but you want to make sure that you polish them off. Polishing your puzzle makes sure it gives a nice finish. I personally like to use a Dremel with a polishing wheel. Make sure it's set at a low setting though, and you can see how much of a shine it gets. If you don't have a Dremel, no problem. Just use a piece of paper to polish up your piece. And you can see how nice the end result is. If you need help finding plastic sheet, feel free to PM me or contact me at kv3puzzles@yahoo.ca. A 12-inch by 12-inch sheet of white or black ABS plastic sheet usually costs around $6 US plus shipping. If you have any questions about building puzzles, please let me know. I'm always happy to help.